So I am a theologian, a Catholic, a sister, and a close associate of Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. So when I was at Georgetown a number of years ago, I actually fell into the archives of Teilhard. I had about 12 book boxes of his notes in my office from 1917 to 1951. And so I could see how he really grappled through ideas to get to this place that we call the noosphere. He was a Jesuit, a priest, a scientist, a paleontologist by training, who really saw something in his time that very few other people saw, and that was this notion of the whole. And as a scientist, he, in a sense, he was a paleontologist who realized that nothing holds together except through the whole, and the whole holds together through its future fulfillment. And I think as I listen to the various talks, it's that question of the whole. What is the whole that Teilhard really was trying to get at? He certainly was very keen on science. In fact, he said, I am first and foremost a scientist. I'm not a theologian. I'm not a spiritual writer. And so he wrote from the point of science. And he realized that, in his view, matter was more than mere atoms moving around. He felt that consciousness or mind was part and parcel of the material world. And so, in his view, consciousness is key to the whole. And he said there can be no single and coherent explanation of the totality of the cosmos if human consciousness is considered an erratic object in a disjointed world. So, in his view, consciousness is not something we acquire or that's added on. It is part and parcel of materiality. In fact, at one point he says, matter is the matrix of consciousness. And we humans, as a good evolutionary biologist, he saw humans as a fact falling within the scope of science. So although he was a Catholic priest, he did not begin the human person, with the idea of God or scripture. He began with science. So his thinking is holistic. He's holistic and he's panpsychic. In other words, consciousness is part and parcel of matter, and mind and matter form the whole. And I think this is key to how Teilhard thought about the noosphere. I say this because a lot of the discussion kind of is around the question of spirituality. We use this language of spirituality, but what the language that Teilhard used was religion. And not in the narrow sense of religion, but in sort of the large cosmic sense of religion. Religion as like ligament, like ligare, what's binding us, what's pulling us. And so religion for Teilhard was a cosmic phenomenon, not necessarily, first and foremost, a human phenomenon. And therefore, religion, we can in a sense say, was associated with that place of mind or awareness or something drawing us. And it was part and parcel of matter, or what science does to understand matter. So he saw science and religion in the same way that he saw mind and matter, as two sides of the same whole. And he said something is, in a sense, driving this. Although we talk about self-organization in nature, there's sort of an unconditional presence that is within nature, part and parcel of the increasing holistic nature of nature, the complexification of nature, and yet not subject to the forces of nature, which he called omega. So omega is this principle that is holding together mind and matter that's keeping the whole moving towards ever-increasing wholeness. And it itself is becoming more whole, more conscious, more complexified. And therefore, he will eventually associate that omega is what we use by the name God. So he says, without matter, we would remain ignorant both of ourselves and God. Now, his notion of God, as I've come to look at Teilhard, it's no wonder the Jesuits really didn't like him, and the Catholic Church really wanted to get rid of him, because he really was a very novel religious thinker. God is almost symbolic of the whole, the totality of everything. And he says this God is present in matter. So he says, I bless you, matter, in your totality and your true nature. You I acclaim as the inexhaustible potentiality for existence and transformation. I acclaim you as the universal power which brings together and unites. I acclaim you as the divine milieu charged with creative power. Raise me up, then, matter, until at long last it becomes possible for me in perfect chastity to embrace the universe. Matter matters for Teilhard. Matter is everything, including that realm of the infinite potential that we might name as the divine. And so he has this really organic sense of matter as the whole place of emerging infinite life and divinity itself. So in this sense, Teilhard says religious experience is part of the inside story of the universe. In other words, religion, that ligamenting, that binding power, is a natural phenomenon, integral to cosmic and biological life. And this is important because I think when we use this term, the noosphere, that prefix nous, which comes from the Greeks, really for the ancient Greeks, nous referred to what we might call the soul, or sometimes we call it the psyche. But it's more than just consciousness. It's consciousness, intuition, feeling. It's everything that makes the aliveness of something. And religion is sort of the binding power of that aliveness or soul. And that's why he said religion is, in a sense, part and parcel of what the noosphere is becoming. So in his view, religion is not something you do, it's something that you are. It's part of this collective consciousness in the process of development. And therefore, he said, it's really part of the Earth's spiritual energy. Like the whole cosmos is being pulled towards something as we move through these layers of increasing complexified life. So he says religion is the universal depth dimension of human experience, the spiritual energy of ultimate concern. Which means that religion, and here's why it's interesting, because religion has sort of the R word that really not a lot of people want to talk about. So we talk about spirituality or something that, can fill in for those ideas. But what he's saying is there's something that's pulling us on to more life. And he says religion is to nurture the human zest for life. The noosphere is not just informationally driven. It's really about more life. So the question is, what's pulling us on to more life? And are we being pulled together? Are we being pulled collectively? So religion is part of this energy of cosmic personalization. So Teilhard thought that something is taking place in evolution. Something is being formed here. It's not just that we're getting more connected, we're becoming more like a body in some ways. But as with every body, we need an animating center. We need, in a sense, what the ancients would call sort of a world soul. So it's for this reason that Teilhard thought that religion and evolution belong together. we can't talk about evolution for Teilhard without realizing there's a depth dimension here. And we need to enfold that depth dimension in the forward movement of evolution. So he says religion and evolution are destined to form one single, continuous organism. He says it's something's taking place here. And that's, in a sense, what escapes sometimes the scientist's eye. We can measure and know, but what is it that's beneath that knowing process that's more than meets the eye? And so religion and evolution depend on and complete one another. And therefore, if we ask, well, what is religion? You know, do I have to believe in anything? And first of all, it's not about a set of beliefs. It's about being attentive to the dimension of human experience, the aliveness, even that Ben himself exemplified in his life. There's a depth dimension of all reality. And religion is, in a sense, fundamentally, the search for ultimate meaning, ultimate concerns, being grasped by ultimate value, ultimate concerns, and then eventually we package those into different forms or faiths or cultures of religious experience. But I think it's this larger sense of religion that Teilhard was really eager to kind of reinvent. In the same way, he kind of reinvents or re-empowers science itself. He thought both these disciplines are lacking something, and they need to be reinvigorated with a new sense of depth, meaning, and purpose together. So in a very interesting article by the late Tom King on scientific research as adoration, Teilhard said there is less difference than people think between research and adoration. Without research, there can be no possibility of real mystical life. And I think Francis was getting at this yesterday in his talk. There's something that pulls the scientist in. There's a horizon there of the unknown that one is eager to know. So mysticism for Teilhard was not just contemplating a truth. It wasn't just sort of being present and aware of the infinite, but it was, in a sense, the very act of discovery. To be a mystic is to be a discoverer for Teilhard. It means to be on the way towards the unknown, and then seeking to know that which is yet not known, and therefore creating a new truth. So that knowledge is a constant process of unifying ideas. So in his view, the universe is in process, and you might say, what is pulling that together is this place of the mind, which is both the intellect, the reason, but even more so the intuition, the feeling, the sense of awe. So Teilhard's mysticism is intellectually creative. It begins with a world that's not understood and comes to know God, this whole, this horizon of wholeness, at the moment where experience, whether it's measurement or the experience itself, lights up with the fire of knowledge. Now, he did think that science by itself can't achieve the noosphere. In other words, it's too narrow, it's too analytical, it's too fragmentary to achieve ultimate meaning. And I think, as I listened yesterday, I think we're beginning to open up to realize that that science is more than just mere measurement, more than just mere empiricism. Teilhard thought that the power of analysis must now be matched by a more holistic and global way of thinking, which includes religion, which includes this depth dimension. And in fact, you know, he kind of pointed to the fact that the very spiritual forces that science claims to dispense with. I mean, I remember years ago when I was in science, You couldn't bring any of the language of religion or spirituality into the laboratory. That was like verboten, that was a nix. And yet, all of science is driven by passion, perfectibility, like we can do this, unity. Like if we discover this, we will discover, the healing or the cure for something, human betterment. So science is driven by the mysticism of discovery. And as these forces turn toward totality, as the horizon of meaning now, in a sense, ever looms before us with greater unity, we're engaged in religion. And so Teilhard thought that science and religion are really two aspects of the same movement of the mind. Philip Hefner said, if we cannot imagine that religion takes shape in science and technology, then we have eliminated the religious depth dimension of the most significant development in human becoming. I think this is a lot of the problem with AI today. It seems to, since religion is not part of that discussion, we can't see how AI may indeed be part and parcel of the religious stretching towards greater unity. We get all kind of, wondrous and destabilized by it. But what Teilhard thought is that humanity is no longer imaginable without science. But he said no more is science possible without some religion to animate it. And I think somehow there's a need to reclaim religion as the sole biologically necessary for the future of science. That the scientist, just like the religious person, is the seeker, one who devotes oneself through love to the labors of discovery. And therefore, Teilhard issued this very famous saying that sort of is underlying a lot of what we're saying here, but he brings it into explicit focus. Religion and science are not two separate areas, one to be attended to, one to be, in a sense, marginalized. They are two faces of the one and the same act of complete knowledge. The only one which can embrace the past and future of evolution so as to contemplate, measure, and fulfillment. The mind seeks to know by understanding, and it also seeks to know by way of passion and unity. And therefore, what Teilhard thought, this level of the noosphere, needs both science and religion to work together, to kind of know in a way that we're knowing by way of, you might say, soul knowledge. There's an intuition, there's a passion, but there's also the keen intelligence of being able to measure, to analyze, to instruct. And he said, only this way can human creative potential be successful in building the earth. To build a human community that is both animated from within by a deep, you might say, energizing center of love, of compassion, of unity, but also, you might say, being pulled towards something more together. This kind of integrated development which respects the earth and our environment. I guess I have wondered, and I was talking to Clement Vidal yesterday, is it time to replace these terms, science and religion, with new language that reflects a holistic epistemology? Because that is what Teilhard is getting at. We can't just have half a brain working, and just make believe the other half's going to do something different. We need a new way of knowing that includes the whole of what we are for the global brain or the noosphere in which we find ourselves. This is what Teilhard thought. We do have competing narratives. We're looking for a new myth in the noosphere. It's not going to work with either science or religion. Right now, I think the noosphere is just on the cusp of its birth, but in order to successfully move into a fruitful development, it needs a myth that can embrace what we are both by way of intellect, by way of spiritual energy, by way of soul, by the very holism of what we are as persons. And therefore, I think Teilhard realized that we need religious, he thought established religions are too narrow, too small, and their myths are competing, you know. Which one's better, which one's going to be saved, which one's going to heaven, which one. So if you have all these competing myths, we're kind of being pulled apart on that side of things. And yet science is saying, no, we're becoming more interconnected. So how do we begin to make sense of this? Teilhard thought we need a revitalization of faith. And he thought we need first faith in matter. We have to believe in the world. We have to believe in the stuff of life itself. Second, he thought we need a faith in the world, that this world really can become something more, and then a faith in the future. And that's why he kind of ended with this kind of insight. He said, in the future, the only religion possible is the religion which will teach us in the very first place to recognize, love, and serve with passion the universe of which we form a part. It's no wonder the Jesuits never published him. Thank you.